must be our goal and our guide. And all that we strive for as a human family, dignity and hope, progress and prosperity, depends on peace. But peace depends on us.
Viewers, thank you very much. Welcome to Punchline Africa Television from the Political Command Center in London. Thank you very much, viewers. Wherever you are in the world, this is the Pan-African station, the only station that talks about Africa, that depends on how, where, when, what can be done for Africa. Africa has been the center, the epic center of conflicts. Africa has been the epic center of refugees. Africa has been the epic center of economic decline. Africa has been the epic center of tribalism, ethnicity. This show, therefore, wants to look at Pan-African and Pan-Africanism from the point of view of Uganda. Uganda today, President Museveni in Kampala, I want to tell you that he was sworn in for the 6th term of office, bringing it to almost the end of the term will be 40 years in power. I have been one of the few critics from 1982 about President Museveni's policies in the Great Lakes region. But we have differences. We have differences. But today, some of the differences come to the same position. They converge. There is nothing that you can stop convergence of ideas on when it comes to Pan-Africanism. There are good things for every leader, even Emperor Nero. Emperor Nero had bad side, but he had a good side. He built Rome afresh after the fire had gazetted it down. Julius Caesar had his own bad side, but he helped to expand the Roman Empire. Pontius Pilate has his own bad side, but he excused it. Jesus said he doesn't see any reason as why he's being crucified. He sent Jesus to Herod. Herod sent back Jesus to Pontius Pilate. The world is a stage where there are contradictions. The world also is a stage where people disagree to agree. The world is a stage where consensus can be built on an idea. Museveni's address today, key words came out. And I want to tell my panel that these are the words that my television for the last, or these are the words that I've cherished for the last 45 years. I've been a Pan-African. I've been struggling for Africa. I've stood for Zimbabwe against sanctions in Europe. You can check in the newspapers in Europe, in Britain. My head and my picture is all over there. I've struggled for freedom. But what pains me is there is a growing pattern which President Museveni brought out today in Kampala. And that the pattern is the North Africa was one of the most peaceful places before the slaughter of Libyan leader Colonel Muammar Gaddafi. I agree with President Museveni, and let people myopic. I am not a parasite. Neither do I ask for money for any idiot. I'm sorry. I'm not a parasite. And I don't ask money from international agencies of George Soros in order to sing George Soros. No. I speak my mind. For the first time today, Museveni touched a core point that I have been saying on this television. I don't know, I want to thank the president for having been one of the followers of my television since its inception. He has seen the vision of my Pan-Africanism, where direction which I've been taking serious. I have been saying the same things. Had people listened, had African Union been African Union, would there be a conflict in Africa? The areas that President Museveni mentioned from his inaugural speech are the same areas I've been mentioning and highlighting for the people of Africa. Africa needs to wake up. Africa needs to unite. Africa needs to reject the mantras of Europe. France, the only thing that President Museveni did not want to embarrass people, and he did not want to say it. Your Excellency, you are hearing, and I know my daughter, my younger daughter, sister, your chief of communication in State House, Linda Nabusai, take this step to him. You did not, you should have come out openly. You came closer to scoring what Dr. Matsanga has been saying. France is our problem. Don't beat about the bush, Your Excellency. France is our problem. There's nobody on this panel who will say France is not our problem. France is our problem. It's the problem of the people of Africa. 3/4 of Africa is consumed in a war because of the French. President Museveni should have almost came closer, but became diplomatic and turned on his African leaders, fellow African leaders, and I believe President Uhuru Kenyatta, another Pan-African whom I'm proud of, whom I think can steer Pan-Africanism, whom I think can lead Africa, whom I think can speak the mind of the people of Africa, was listening. President Emerson Mnangagwa, whom I believe knows what it pains to have a non-Pan-African measures that are controlled, brought from outside, external darker forces, heaping sanctions on a country like Zimbabwe. Panelists, the inauguration of President Museveni, and I want people to understand me. I don't break laws. I know on the panel here, they don't fear to talk your mind because I will challenge you also. Not because I love Museveni, it's because I want to love facts. If the Supreme Court of a country has ruled, I have lived in the United Kingdom for 36 years. I'm partly British with manners, culture, everything, food, laughter, even cry. Yes, 36 years of my 65 years. I believe in the rule of law. I believe in constitutionalism. I cannot be a wafog by coming here when a Supreme Court has ruled, which is the final court of any country, that I want to fight you again. The only thing I can do is when I'm annoyed, I pick a gun and I go to the bush. Which can now please Kirimi. Because Kirimi, that's where we are. That's where we are. You want us to head. I don't have time to oppose what the Supreme Court has done. And I want to tell my fellow opposition. I am one of the most senior opposition leaders in Uganda, outside Uganda. Let people know it today. But I don't believe in stupidity. I don't believe in non-constitutional means. I finished that journey. If you are planning unconstitutional, Supreme Court of a country has ruled, whether badly or nicely or half-baked, is a decision of the Supreme Court. And I want my fellow Ugandans to understand me. Not because I have anything to do with President Museveni. We have a lot to disagree on. And the people who are going to label me, Dr. Nyachama and the panel, are the same people who actually laid down the rules that are eating us today. I've never forgiven them. I have never forgiven some of them. They laid down the rules that are killing us today. They worked with President Museveni to lay down the rules that are making Uganda the way it looks. So you want to come now, after you have been sucked away from the rules that you made, to convince David, who has been fighting your own behavior, including you. Leo nataka kirimi ujue, wewe. Ujue kabisa kutoka kwangu. I am one of the few people who opposed President Museveni from 1982. When he went to the bush, I've never agreed, I've never surrendered, and I will never surrender. I will only engage for the sake of my country, Uganda. Period. Munasikia leo? Period. Don't ask me any silly questions. Otherwise, I will use the word idiot. You know, we Ugandans use our word. I don't have time for lazy brains. Yeah. Because I took my route, not in America. I took my route in the United Kingdom. My student number is well known, well documented, well publicized if you want. I don't take stupid prisoners. I have no regrets for telling France my views. If they are disagreeing, why are we arresting mercenaries in the Central African Republic? Production, bring the picture of those mercenaries who claims, I've been telling you on this television time and time again, and I want this, Stephen, record this to forward it to all the presidents who were here, who are in Kampala today. This speech and these speeches are going to be very important for the future of Africa. Africa is crumbling. Nigeria is going to pieces. Niger, Ivory Coast, Mali, Libya, Algeria, Sahawari, Cameroon, Central African Republic, Democratic Republic of Congo, Mozambique, Somalia, Eritrea, Ethiopia, Tigray. Africa is falling to pieces. Why? People are looking for oil and gas and the minerals. President Museveni was correct on this today. We disagree, and I want to make it very categorical, clear. There are so many things that I disagree with His Excellency President Museveni, including his non-payment of my money, which is well known, documented by the EU, AU, and the UN. Riek Machar is the man who was supposed to pay me, who called me for the peace process under UN. My money was not paid, Mr. President. I never took a penny. I need it. I need it, Your Excellency. You have done very well. I'm a Pan-African. I want to build my Pan-African brand. I am ahead of you, Your Excellency. I've built a foundation here. My foundation is here. And it will never go down yet. But those are things that make me disagree with you. Plus democracy. Some, I am not talking about the democracy that people lecture to you. I'm talking about internal dynamism. There is a difference of George Soros telling me to seek democracy than George Soros, than myself asking internal dynamism of allowing space for people to operate. Yes, you have done very well on security. Mr. President, I allowed you for security for going into Somalia. If I had powers, I would allow you to sweep Somalia, remove the terrorists up to Indian Ocean, and we slaughter them there. Yes. Yes. Somalia would have been pacified. Now, having said that, and having concurred today with His Excellency President Museveni inaugural speech on one item, the item of Pan-Africanism, I want to submit to the panel and to you participants on this show that the mess why Africa finds itself in this mess is because of AU, African Union. Mr. President, you did. I'm answering your speech because none, Chagulani cannot answer you with this good English. He will answer you when he's fighting on Facebook. I'm answering with the cardinal principles. Your Excellency, it is the African Union that has a problem. And the area we fix African Union, it has been bought by France. Why are Africans not seeing that? We went to put Amina Mohammed into power. A Moroccan lady came and bought every African leader except Uhuru Kenyatta, Ethiopian Prime Minister, yourself, and Mugabe, and Kagame. The rest of African heads of state, including Tanzania, I don't hide, were bought by a French Moroccan lady who works with Total Oil. Their airplanes were paid for fees at Bode Airport. Hotel bills were paid. France paid. Total Oil paid for the election of Mr. Muhammad Faki. I have evidence on radio, on video, on pictures, on photos. I have taken a lot of evidence. One of the people who took a bribe when I was seeing was Zimbabwean former foreign minister, Simbarashe Mubebegwi. I found him being given $50,000 in new notes in Sheraton Hotel. Stupid, very stupid, an idiot, to vote in favor of Muhammad Faki. I reported the matter to the late Mugabe. Mugabe sacked him. Immediately Mugabe, when I showed Mugabe the tape, which was on my pen, that Your Excellency, this is it, through my channels, because there were some stupid CIOs, a man called Hampton Bonyongwe, another zygote in African politics. I bypassed the channels, delivered the video. Mugabe sacked Zimbarash. He got the money. They were paid. Your Excellency President Museveni, today you have raised something very important in Africa. These young men here who are on the panel listening to my views, mark that the biggest problem of Africa, gentlemen, comes from African Union. It has been paid, it has been compromised, we have no voice. Muhammad Faki, who was in Kampala, must have been sweating in his seat when Museveni was naming organizations that were dictating on Africa on what to do. The killing, the dismembering of Libya was done by France. The first Tomahawk cruise missiles were hit by France. But the African Union was compromised by Dr. Jean Ping. And I want you people to take notes. He was paid to delay the African Union plane in Mauritania, in Bamako, in Mali. The plane of leaders were going. You remember where Tangula was the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Kenya. He was caught up in Bamako in a coup that took place in Mali. They were on their way to Libya to see whether they can resolve by evacuating Gaddafi. But Jean Ping, working with the French intelligence, maneuvered to delay the plane and say it was difficult, while he told the French to come and hit the missiles, which made it difficult for the plane to land in Tripoli. I and the President Museveni are privy to those details. I am saddened that I wrote a letter, the only letter that has ever pleased the whole world, that it was put on the front page of the New Vision about Libya. Fantastic letter in fantastic English, delivered to the New Vision headline, which has never happened for almost 32 years. I was taken and it was agreed, therefore, that Libya would cause a problem. My second letter was very clear that if we don't help Libya, we shall dismember North Africa. I am on record. You can read my organization, www.panafricanforumltd.com. That letter is there. The production can bring it on, and you'll see I predicted that there will be no peace in the north of Africa as long as Gaddafi is gone and Libya is dismembered. Gentlemen, in conclusion, therefore, there is always a window of hope. We like to work with the French, but we like also to tell them the mistakes that they make. There was no war in Mozambique, for example. I kept on this television telling Tawish there is a proxy war in East Africa. Today, that proxy war is there. If you look at the presidents who came to Kampala, one of the nearest presidents did not come. And that is Kagame. What is the essence of African unity then? Viewers, those are my remarks, opening remarks. I hope the panel now has got bearings, where to attack, and where to hinge your points. I will kickstart with Dr. Joseph Nyachama. On the floor, limit all of you, please limit so that we can cover quite a lot and come back second round, third round, then we summarize. Thank you. God bless you. Dr. Nyachama. Africa, Pan-Africanism is on the way to create unity and remove the woes that kill Africa. Do you agree?
Thank you, Dr. Masanga. Absolutely, in you, Dr. Masanga, lies the true Pan-Africanism. And to that extent, I wish to thank you, sir. And you have indeed highlighted the sentiments of the president of Uganda, who was being sworn in today. And they cited very specific cases of Northern Africa, where in fact French is trying indirectly to dismantle Africa from, where we know the real issue is to get the African resources. Dr. Masanga, in this forum, we have discussed French quite for a long time, and the French needs to know our discussions bordered on not good but for them. Meaning that French, if they're listening or they have their agents, has been isolated by Africans. The Pan-Africans, like you, Dr. Masanga, and my fellow panelists, it is behaving badly. And Africa must realize that it is not too small to manage its affairs and transform the continent for the benefits of its people. In fact, I usually say, if you think you are too small to transform a continent like Africa, then you have never been in bed with a mosquito. Let French know, therefore, Dr. Masanga, it has already been named. You know, if a member of parliament behaves badly, he is named. This forum today is in fact renaming French because it's not the first time. And all the head of state, issues if they have been brought to the fore that the French is behaving in a manner which is going to bring a lot of conflict in Africa, then AU needs to take notes of that and take action. And without such action, we will conclude they are agents of the evildoers, like French as a country. Since Dr. Masanga is just the initial remarks, this issue we need to discuss it soberly. And I want to say this without any fear of contradiction. Poverty is not a citizen of Africa. It is only a person who has been welcomed where he has been told to be comfortable. So Africa needs to wake up and identify its enemies and work with the friends who can help it develop. But among those who have been identified not to be friends is French, and we need to move as such. For now, Dr. Masanga, since it's my initial remark, I submit.
Thank you very much, Dr. Joseph Nyachama, for those remarks. Let me come to one of our guests from Harare, Zimbabwe, Saxon Vima, before I come to next is Kirimi, next is Sean, then we come to Japan Karanja, then we come to the voltage, the analyst, the special assignment man, Samuel Tawish Olisasana. So feel comfortable. That is how the order is going to be. Saxon Vima from Zimbabwe. What's your view? What's your Pan-Africanism? Can Pan-Africanism, is Pan-Africanism the only way to defeat conflicts in Africa?
Yes, we need to, Pan-Africanist ideology needs to take center stage if Africa is to emancipate itself from the shackles of colonialism and neo-colonialism. You've highlighted the problem of France. This is well documented. not only didn't start now. After post-1960s, we've had civil wars that have been sponsored by the West, mainly the CIA, the French, and the MI16. You see, they've got a destabilization agenda, and this destabilization agenda uses the Africans. You know, they use the brown envelope. Our people are selling their souls for 30 pieces of silver, selling the destiny and a future generation just for 30 pieces of silver. They're not looking at themselves that the reason for fighting for independence was to have total independence in the sense of social, political, and economic independence. In some of the AU, it's problematic. Why? Because AU is funded by these same countries. We need to start funding our own institutions, giving our own selves loans from creating an African bank to finance each other. At the moment we rely on finance, on loans from these other Western countries, definitely they come with conditions. You are aware that either they use intelligence or they use NGOs. As long as we are not independent of these institutes, of the financial institutions and the NGO forum, NGOs, PSOs, we are likely to suffer stillbirths in all our programs. Pan-Africanism needs to be nurtured and promoted by the leaders. And our leaders, the problem that we have, most of our leaders are not African-centered. They look at their wallets. They open banks in the Western countries to siphon the resources. And the one who plays the piper plays the tune. We need to change our mindset. We need to promote our African values. We need to believe in ourselves, change everything, change our mindset, decolonize the mind. These leaders that are being given money, they're colonized mentally. They think that if they enjoy life, they've made it, but they don't look at the ethos and the values of the liberation struggle, the fight for independence. It was not a political independence, but total economic independence, I submit.
Thank you very much. We need total economic independence in order to move forward, in order for us to have an Africa, a Pan-African vision that can stop conflict, that can unite our people. Kirimi, do you think it is important for Pan-African lessons to be studied in primary schools and senior secondary schools to teach people what Pan-Africanism as a syllabus, one of the syllabus in our curriculum? What do you think, given that President Museveni today highlighted areas in north of Africa, which were once very peaceful? Today, Boko Haram, ISIS, you are an expert on searching this information on ISIS, and that Frenchman that you saw, who disguised as a journalist, but at the same time, is a mercenary selling guns. What do you think Africa can do in that context? Douglas.
Thank you, Dr. Masanga, for having me on the show, and good evening to my fellow panelists. Yes, I think it's about time the people of Africa got educated in their own history, in their own ways of living. Pan-Africanism is our way of life. This is the way we should be able to coexist as a people, and also for the continent of Africa to go forward. Pan-Africanism should be part and parcel of our lives. When many people, for example, when you pioneer, they talk about Pan-Africanism, when you fight for Africa, many people think you are fighting for yourself, you are fighting for some other interest. They don't believe. They have been brainwashed by the Western allies to believe, Western powers to believe that fighting for Pan-Africanism, you must be fighting for a particular president, for a particular person. The true emancipation of the African person is
perhaps you can go auto. You can change your equipment. We come back to you. Speak without the video. Let's studio in Nairobi. You can
Pan-Africanism becomes a culture. When people like Idris Deby.
Can you speak without the video? We shall hear you.
Yes, yes, doctor.
Without the video. Just
Doctor,
speak without the video. Because we can't hear you properly. Yeah, speak now.
Thank you, Dr. Masanga.
Yes.
And also thank you for this opportunity. My point veers into Pan-Africanism as a culture, Pan-Africanism as a school curriculum where our children will be educated on the very tenets that holds the people of Africa together. What Pan-Africanism is for us to be able to come together as brothers and sisters and forge an alliance of willing people, like East African countries formed. President Museveni and President Uhuru Kenyatta pioneered the coalition of the willing, where they came together for the common interest of their people, for our common ambitions as the people of Africa. Dr. Masanga, I believe and I pray that curriculum in Africa shall be used, shall be amended so that we can have Pan-Africanism embedded as a culture that is taught to our school children, and also even political parties should be able to have an opportunity to grow.
Okay. We lost Douglas there. Thank you very much, Douglas. You brought up your points, and you arrange your Zoom, then you come back to us. The next person was Javani Karanja. Or was it? Yeah, Javani Karanja. Javani Karanja from Nanyuki.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. David Matsanga. And thanks for having me on the show this good evening. And here you're having some heavy rains in this area of Kenya, but it's a blessing from God. On the issue of Africa and Pan-Africanism, I would like to say, first of all, we need to look at the issues that divide us. What makes us Africans not to come together? What are these issues that makes us divide? If we can be able to identify some of these issues that make us divide as a people, then we can be able to have a clear way on how to unite, on how to have a solution on those issues. Then we can talk of Africanism. Before independence in our African countries, our forefathers were united together for a Pan-African spirit to fight for our independence. For this generation, we need to have a goal. We need to have something that will come together, that will bring us, we need to come together to identify a goal, an objective that will bring us together as a people, and we have the resources and the intellectuality and the manpower to fight for that one goal, and that is to unify the African continent. Therefore, that should be our goal, so that we unite as a continent. And when we do that, we'll be able to overcome the economic, the political, and the cultural differences, all setbacks that makes us fight, that make us divide. Therefore, as a people, as African continent, we need to start changing our mindset, as the participant from Zimbabwe was saying, so that we can start inculcating the values of Africanism, the values of African spirituality, the issues of African morality, and the African values. By doing that, we'll be able to set a generation, even the generation to come, that this is the way to follow. And we must also ensure that we put in place good leadership, good leaders who have the spirit of Pan-African, leaders who can bring us together. And we, as you are saying, Dr. David Masanga, what President Museveni was saying, we need also to have leaders in Africa who will start pushing the narrative of Africanism, the narrative of Pan-Africanism, and that will come if we, the people in Africa, if we, the people who elect these leaders, we be well informed. Therefore, it is high time these people who, and the Pan-African, Punchline TV, and other people who push for Pan-Africans, we keep on making our voice heard. We keep on pushing for this narrative so that at the end of the day, the people of Africa, we be able to see that Africans, we have the potential, we have the capability, we have the resources to make our continent great. We don't necessarily need to depend on these external forces, because at the end of the day, when they come, they take our resources, and they disrupt us. That is why they ensure, and as France and other external factors, they ensure that they disrupt our peace, they disrupt our leadership, so that they can be able to have a conducive environment to thrive. Therefore, we must start with ourselves. Without the help of the external forces, we start from within. We have the necessary resources in place so that we build the capability, we build the resources, we build the infrastructure and structures that will ensure that we get to the next level, we get to that, and we emancipate our people from poverty. Because a poverty-stricken continent, a poverty-stricken area, these people who are in poverty, diseases, and illiteracy, they cannot be able to champion for any cause. We must start from there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Karanja. Mind said, poor people, as a result of poverty, cannot change much in Africa unless we remove those obstacles of poverty, ignorance, disease that kills most of the African continent. The people colonizing us got rid of malaria a long time ago. When you fly to their country, they have to spray the plane before you take off. For us here, we are still with malaria nets. We find people coming projects that they are training us how to use a mosquito net. So how can we develop when we cannot eradicate? We cannot have a scientist from Kenya saying, I've got malaria tablets now, manufactured from Nairobi industrial area. We don't have. Shoni Wesonga, where did we go wrong? Where did Africa go wrong? The AU that we haplessly looked at as it slides into chaos of French versus English, Anglo-Africa, and Franco-Africa, Francophone countries, Anglophone countries. That's what the AU is now. Any candidature that you put forward, they select on the basis of either you are French-speaking country or you are English. How can Africa come out of this quagmire, then unite to face the enemy? That could be, an enemy comes in so many ways. For Africa to be able to fight disease, you don't need medicine. You need food. A man who has not eaten will fall sick, but a person who has eaten will not fall sick anyhow. Most of the diseases are caused because of poor feeding, which we have plenty of food in countries like Uganda. Museveni today was telling you of a surplus. Uganda produces 600 1,000 metric tons of sugar, but Ugandans only consume 385. The rest is sitting up in factories. 15 million tons of maize Uganda can consume only 6 million. 9 is sitting in Kampala. Why can't Africa remove the barriers such that trade can be anywhere so that people in Kenya, some parts of Kenya, don't cry of hunger? While some parts in Uganda have plenty of food waiting for people to eat. Wesonga.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Matsanga, David. And of course, for me, there is no hope in AU. It is clear on record that the AU envoy to the US was sacked by the AU chairman for blatantly stating that that France had taken a foothold in its former colonies, and it was actually running the show behind the scenes and therefore influencing and interfering in the leadership of those countries. That was a statement heavy enough to get him fired. And that tells you that as a people, as countries which are under the African Union, we are no longer sovereign, we are no longer independent, because now the AU has been hijacked and it's a puppet of France and other powerful Western powers. Going back to the question of Pan-Africanism, we have to understand, first of all, that Pan-Africanism was birthed in the 18th century when we had slavery and we had also colonialism facing the continent of Africa. And that is when our forefathers came together and formed a spirit that will actually protect the African people against being taken to slavery, and also to resist colonialism being imposed on Africans, and for the countries which had already been colonized to make sure that these countries are decolonized. And that was the spirit, that was the legacy that was carried forward to the likes of Kwame Nkrumah, Ahmed Sekou Toure, the likes of Jomo Kenyatta, the likes of Milton Apollo Obote. And that was the spirit that was even propagated in the All African Conference, which was held in 1957 in Ghana under the patronship of Kwame Nkrumah. These people wanted an African continent which is united to oversee that they have similar social, economic, and political ideas, in that the African people will come up with their own system of education. The African people could come up with economic policies that will ensure that they do away with trade barriers. The African people will come up with unions that will ensure that they give value to the minerals and the resources that we have in Africa. The African people will come up with a political system which is not blemished by the influence and the interference of their former colonizers and the former colonial masters. But along the way, Dr. Masanga, we seem to have lost track of what the African Union, the Organization of African Union, had in the very first place, the facets of Pan-Africanism that our founding fathers had back in the day. So what we need to do as a people, we need to reevaluate. We need to go back to the drawing board. We need to go and look at the key agendas that really were used to form the organization of the African Union, which were to ensure that we have unity of purpose in terms of social, political, and economic terms. Because, Dr. Masanga, as we speak today, why is it that it is easier for Kenya to export goods and commodities to Europe, but it is very difficult for Kenya to export goods to its neighbors like Tanzania and Somalia? Today, as we are speaking, Somalia has already put a ban on Miraa actually getting spoiled in the airport. Why is it that we can export things in as far as the UK, but we cannot export our goods to Uganda or maybe Rwanda or Burundi? So for me, Dr. Matsanga, I think we have to go back to the drawing as Africans, and not until we sit and we agree upon ourselves and easen up the trade barriers, the red tapes that has been derailing our cooperation in terms of economic, social, and political collaboration. then we shall always be under the influence of foreign powers, which continue to exploit our resources and which continue to also interfere with our leadership as the African people. Remember, when we come together as a people, we have strength in numbers, and we can be able to sit down and be able to agree that we are not going to give these colonizers our resources, our raw resources, so that they go and manufacture, they process them and bring us ready-made goods, which are much expensive. That is what the colonialists used to do. Apart from taking away our resources, they also used us as slaves and also used us as a market for their already manufactured goods. We should not be accepting that in the 21st century. We should sit as a people, look on the ways we can be able to add quality to our produces, be able to open up the trade barriers that are there, be able to talk about our leadership, the structures of leadership, and how to ensure that there's stability in the African continent, and then be able to come and emerge as a continent which is strong and unified under the Pan-African spirit. I submit.
Thank you very much. As you look today, Tawish, lots of things are happening on the continent. President Museveni mentioned several countries: Chad, Libya, Niger, Mali, Mauritania, Ivory Coast, Senegal, Guinea. Nigeria is finished. Nigeria, once a powerful house, economic house of Africa, is now littered. There's a litany of insurgency in the north. You don't know who controls what and where. What is your opinion about the way we finish this conflict and these conflicts in Africa?
Very well. Thank you so much, Dr. David Masanga and my colleague panelist, and indeed everyone who is actually watching us this evening. Dr. Masanga, I want to say it's a great honor actually to make my input on this very important topic that matters to the continent of Africa, because we are African. Africa is our business. To start off, Dr. Masanga, I think I want to address this. I want to address this matter on three fronts. The first front is about the attitude and the aspect of patriotism that we have as African people. And because when you talk about conflicts that continue to actually bedevil the continent of Africa, it's about our attitude as a people and also the level of patriotism that we have as a people of Africa. To what extent are we supposed to what extent are we actually giving or sacrificing to our continent? Because again, when you look into the kind of insurgencies, the kind of conflicts, the kind of lack of peace and instabilities that we experience in our continent today of Africa, it speaks about the level of patriotism and that attitude that we have as Africans. Because again, all these conflicts, when you go down to want to get the bottom of it all, you get to understand that all these conflicts, much as they are funded and actually funded by other Western power interests, you get to understand that we are the same people who are executing those interests. We are the people who are making it, we are actually putting it into action when it comes to the ground. So it speaks about how we love our continent and how much we can actually live for our continent and sacrifice so much for our continent. Dr. Masanga, there's an aspect about the attitude. And looking onto the kind of relationship that we have as a continent, the kind of relationship that the countries have in terms of neighbors, you fail really to understand. You've just alluded to the fact that President Paul Kagame of Rwanda did not attend President Museveni's swearing in today in Kampala, Uganda. What does it tell you, Dr. Masanga? It tells you that we have deep-seated hatred even amongst ourselves as a people of this continent. And in itself, it cannot give us actually an avenue. It cannot give us an atmosphere for us even to think critically and move this continent forward as actually in oneness. So because of that disintegration, Dr. Masanga, it makes it impossible for a continent of Africa to realize its full potential, and therefore makes it very easy even for the Western power countries and conspirators to actually continue manipulating us as a people. So I think there's that question of attitude and patriotism, Dr. Masanga, that we need to address as a people. Why in the first place do we find enmity even with our neighbors? Why is it in the first place that do we find it difficult to talk to the person in the next door? Why does it become impossible for example, Somalia and Kenya today to actually have a table discussion together? What is making it so difficult? How is it so possible, Dr. Masanga, that we can have, for example, Somalia admit people from, say, from Europe come to Somalia? They can easily be welcomed. They can have a chat. They can talk. They can strike business deals. But it is so difficult for Somalia to strike an almost similar deal or business engagement with Kenya or Tanzania or any other country in the East Africa region, leave alone even the Africa region per se. So it speaks about that attitude and unity, which we need actually, attitude rather, and patriotism, which we need to harness if we are to make any great strides, Dr. Masanga. As I finish up, let me just touch on two aspects, that is of unity and independence. One of the panelists here on the panel, Dr. Masanga, has mentioned the question of independence, the question of us having, for example, the African Union, but we cannot even fully fund the African Union, where we still have to rely on other international organizations or international countries to come and fund the operations of the African Union. That in itself makes us hostage to the international conspirators, because again, we always have to serve the interests of the master. And so if we have to go astray, if we have to try and think independently, it becomes difficult, because again, we must always put priority to the interests of our master. So there's a question of independence, Dr. Masanga, when it comes to funding of our very own organization, and also independence in terms of our own countries. Today, you find that an African country with favorable climate, with a good soil, with enough manpower, we cannot even produce food for our own consumption, let alone for export, Dr. Masanga. What does it speak? We have to rely on other Western power countries to help us time and again, donations and such kind of things. And that in itself makes us actually prisoners and hostage to the actually the interests of these international countries, Dr. Masanga. You are one of the people, Dr. Masanga, who at some point, I think, because I'm not well versed on this, who said America today has food in its stores that can actually feed her people for 200 years from today if anything happens. Say, for example, there will be floods or there will be drought for the next 200 years, that America has in store food that can actually take care of our people for the next 200 years. But in Africa today, let alone, leave alone the question of actually 200 years to come, is the question of the next hour, the next minute, what is it that we are going to eat? So how can we put our house in order, Dr. Masanga? It is time that we need to actually put our heads together. The dream that the people like Muammar Gaddafi had, the dream that Julius Nyerere had, the dream that Jomo Kenyatta had, and the others. What is it that we can do to bring our people together so that we can reason together? What is it that makes it difficult for us to make our continent self-sufficient? What is it that makes it difficult for us to make sure that our people cannot actually go to Europe to actually seek for what they refine in quotas, green pastures? Can't we have those greener pastures here? Given that we have enough soil, we have good soils that can cultivate, we have favorable rain, and we have enough manpower, people who are actually even gone to school, people who can do these jobs. But again, because of our priorities that are upside down, Dr. Masanga, we find ourselves that we are in that very difficult and precarious situation. Very lastly, Dr. Masanga, on the question of unity, this is very important. One of our panelists here talked about why it is possible for you, Dr. Masanga, even to be for you not to be welcome in Kenya or to be welcome in Tanzania, or even in your very own country where you're born in Uganda, but a person with white skin can easily be given a seat. And it's not a big deal for them. I mean, even today you went to a matatu, when people are queuing, you find a white man, he will be given priority. You go to a hotel, he will be served first and you will be waiting in the queue. Why can't we give priority and find it useful that let us also think like we are humans, and our people can also be given priority when it comes to all these things? So it's a question of attitude and priorities, a question of unity, it's a question of independence, Dr. Masanga. Once we address those three fundamental aspects, then I think Africa will be making a step in as far as being self-sufficient, and also not being the hostage or prisoners of the Western power conspiracies. Dr. Masanga, I submit.
Thank you very much, Tawish. Mindset. It boils down to what you mindset. We have wrong we have fixed ourselves in the wrong directions. We don't want to think together. To enter South Africa is by visa. You can ask for a visa as if you are going to America. Yet you are a black man going to South Africa, which will liberate it. You have seen South Africa giving conditions of all African countries. But now the economy of South Africa has been shattered. I hope they will now eat their visas, because there will be very few people wanting to go to South Africa anyway. So look at this type of things. Dr. Najama, in our second round of several things happened, not because Uganda is always a country. Some of us have suffered for this country. Some of us have played a pivotal role to bring about peace. Some of us have done many things to bring about political parties back. Some of us have stood by those suffering. And the suffering does not come not only by outsiders, but the suffering comes also by us ourselves. I told you about the question of constitutionalism. A person, once the Supreme Court of a country rules, you don't have an alternative. Even if you are injured, even if one leg is cut, you remain with that wound of one leg and wait for tomorrow. Are we so impulsive in our politics that we forget that democracy also dictates that you have to accept defeat and move on without saying, I'm coming back, I'm going to swear a president, I'm going to do this. You saw what happened in Kenya in 2018. You saw another president or people's president. This theory of people's president and the swearing is catching up in Africa. Every opposition leader wants to swear a president, an alternative president outside the perimeters of law. What do you think Africa can do to give safe passage to the current leaders? Is it the fear to step aside? Is it the fear of being incriminated? Is it the fear? Without, please don't specifically on Uganda, no. Pick another African country. For example, in Zimbabwe, the Zimbabweans will agree with me that since elections were conducted in 2018, Chamisa still does not recognize President Mnangagwa as the head of state. He still calls him, he hasn't even shaken his hand to say, I agree, you are the head of state. Even now, as we approach 2 years to another election, Chamisa has not been convinced that he lost an election. What can we do in Africa to bring constitutionalism, sir?
Thank you, Dr. Masanga. First of all, I want us to begin from my country, the Republic of Kenya. President, His Excellency Uhuru Kenyatta, his humility.
We lost you there. Kirimi, the same question. Kirimi, Thank you very much. Douglas? Okay, Javani Karanja. The same question. Wesonga.
Yes, thank you very much, Dr. Matsanga. And for me, I'll be very brief because these are questions that we have always discussed on this forum. And the key to having a stability in the African leadership in that we do not have scenarios that are like one we have in Uganda, the one we have in Malawi, we have in also Zimbabwe, is that as African people, we have to understand that we had our own systems of governance. And before the colonialists came, we used to have very stable structures of leadership, and each and every community, at least I could say, that we had our very own leaders, and we had a way of electing these leaders into those leadership positions, or either appointing them or maybe doing it the hereditary way. So what we need to do as African people, we need to reevaluate. We need to do a system of governance which takes a flight from the current, I'll call in quotes, democracy that we have, because it seems not to work in Africa. When you look back in history, Dr. Matsanga, democracy, the Western democracy, has been the cause of chaos in many elections that have been, has always gone into genocides because of the disputed election and all that. So that tells you that as a people, we do not have strong systems that could actually be able to give this Western democracy a seamless run and be able to ensure that we do have an effective leadership. So one of the recommendations that I will give is that we need as a people to bring a kind of leadership, a structure of leadership that is well conversant, that well integrates with our values, with our morals, with our virtues as African people. Remember, we are people who are used to the hereditary kind of leadership, monarchs, fiefdoms and chiefdoms, Dr. Matsanga. So if we can sit down and be able to reintegrate this one and be able even to come up with some kind of a hybrid kind of leadership structure that will ensure that we do not have, after every election, we do not have a dissident group or maybe a jilted group which goes into the streets, goes into the courts to derail the mandate of the people in office, then we shall be able to have a very, very well-knit system of governance that will ensure that we have no external interference. But as it is right now, the democracy that we were left with by the colonialists seems to be untenable, and it has brought the African people more tribulation than the tranquility that was anticipated to give us as a people. And to some extent, Dr. Matsanga, I always see democracy as a bait given to the African people, always keeping them in circles to fight against one another, to keep them in chaos and in a retrogressive atmosphere, which ensures that we concentrate more on politics, we concentrate more on fighting one another, moving in courts, push and pull, demonstration, wars, and all those ethnic violences, as we neglect development and progress of our own people. So to me, we have to do away with the current system of leadership. We have to do away with the democratic structure of leadership that we have now. We need to reconsider and be able to look back into our history, to look back into the values that we had, so that we can be able to foment a structure that will enable us to govern ourselves in our very own way. Otherwise, still reading from the script of the colonialists, still reading from the script of the Western powers, we shall be playing into their hands, and we shall be governing ourselves with the rules, foreign rules, which have been given unto us and which we do not have the structures to make them tenable and make them effective in our political system. I submit.
Thank you very much. Tawish, the same question.
Yeah, I'm back.
Oh, Javan, yes, the same. You had the question.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dr.
We are looking at what shall we do to create constitutionalism in Africa, such that the loser goes home, the winner calls the loser, they talk. What do you do?
Yeah, thank you, Dr. David Matsanga. And a constitutionalism that will ensure that everybody and every person, their interests, their beliefs, their way of life, whether they are the minority or the majority, are captured. To me, that is the only sure way to ensure that everybody, whether you support the opposition, whether you support the government, whoever you support, at the end of the day, we need a system that will ensure that we don't exclude, but we include, we bring an inclusivity. And I think, to me, the democracy that we have is a good system. What we can do is to make it better. And we can make it better by ensuring that we have a system whereby even if you lose in an election, your people will be guaranteed of development. Therefore, we need to bring laws that will ensure that whether you're in opposition, whether you are in government, developments and resources will go to your people. And we have seen, especially in South Africa, where they have a mixed proportional representation. I think that should cut across all African countries. We have not seen the South Africans fighting because of presidential ballot. But when you come to Kenya, when you go to other countries, even like Uganda, the problem they have is Museveni overstaying in power. And how can they do, why do they have a problem? Because they feel like those who are in opposition, those who are not in government, their views are not well captured. So we can have a representation whereby everybody, we bring a representation whereby we reduce the problem is the presidency. And we can do this by ensuring that the lucrative, the sweetness, and the valueness that we have, the value that we have in the presidency seat is reduced. And we can do that by ensuring that we create additional positions. We expand this executive to accommodate everybody, to accommodate a bigger percentage of people. And when we do that, we reduce the sweetness, we reduce what makes people fight. I think that should be the case, because in Africa, presidency is a scarcity commodity. And a scarce commodity is also a highly demanded commodity. And by ensuring that we expand the executive, we reduce the demand of the presidency. So the supply, we increase the supply. By doing that, we ensure that people don't fight. Because people in Africa, what makes us divide is the topmost seat. I think, to me, that should be the way to go, and to ensure that we have a representation, or a parliamentary form of representation, and we have prime minister and so on. To me, that will ensure that everybody will feel as part of the government, because at the end of the day, with the nature of the leaders that we have been able to grow, they end up, when they take power, they end up discriminating others. They end up taking resources to themselves. And those outside in the political code, they end up feeling neglected. Therefore, we need to settle issues out in African way. Even before we have this democracy that we enjoy today, we used to survive. People used to have the chiefs, they used to have the elders, like where I come from, used to have the Kikuyu Council of Elders, and they used to make things roll because there was nobody who was leading. It was a group of people who are controlling everything. We need to have to change the way we do this, or change the circles of election. We can have elections even after 20 years, or even 7 years or 10 years. We need to create our own ways, rather than copy pasting what the Western Africa, the Western and the Europeans does. We need to create our systems, our inbuilt, our homemade system of government, constitutions, and so on. Because at the end of the day, we are different. We have our African values, our African morals, our African spiritualities, and our African heritage. We need to go back to the drawing board and try to understand how our forefathers before independence used to survive, used to live together, and there was no this issue of tribalism. Therefore, we need to fight these issues that make us divide, and we need to deal with the issue of corruption, nepotism, tribalism, all these things that make us divide as a people. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I can see Dr. Chama has come back. You said you were cut off while you were making your point. Continue with that point, Dr. Nyachama.
Yes, thank you. I'm sorry, Dr. I got the internet off from my laptop, so I had to go to the phone. Anyway, what I was saying, Daktari and my fellow panelists, was I had started with my president. You know, the problem in Africa is what we call the will. You know, the will is the inner strength, and the inner strength has nothing to do with the raw ambition. It is the ability to surrender. It is more to do with the surrender than strength. That is why, if you look at in 2017, the election in Kenya, the president of the republic accepted the verdict of the Supreme Court. In fact, to that extent, I admire President Uhuru Kenyatta because he has an inner strength, which is the will to surrender, and any outside decision does not affect him. And in Africa, we have this problem of ego, and you find that if you think your neighbor has got a position, you have to fight him. So they suffer from a syndrome we call the black crab syndrome. You know, Dr. Masanga, the black crabs, if you collect them and put them in a bottle where the top is open, do you know that not even one crab will escape? Because when one crab tried to escape, the other crabs will pull it down. So the problem, first of all, we have in Africa is the way we are groomed. We suffer from the syndrome of black crab syndrome, where people think if Dr. Masanga has been pronounced as the leader, because of that syndrome and the ego, you want even to produce things and fight. What therefore I'm appealing to my fellow African leaders is to have the will to accept things the way they are if you think it is prudent, especially if the court has pronounced itself. You have to have the will to surrender. It is a strength which we need to develop. Number two, my fellow panelists, you may not see this, the problem we have in Africa is not even for presidency, it is poverty. Poverty in the sense that people now have come to realize if our own becomes the president, tidings will start to flow to us when he goes to power. Can you imagine, my fellow panelists, and through you, Dr. Masanga, if every citizen at least was able to meet his own basic needs, none could be much interested who would be the president. And none would be interested to be used to fight for his or her tribe. So the first thing, as you ask what should be done, is to come up with the mechanisms of fighting poverty in Africa. I have never revealed to my panelists, I am involved myself in a program which we develop a concept. We call it industrializing rural Africa. And one day I will bring my partner, if Dr. will allow, be able to bring how we can begin from industrializing rural Africa as a way of empowering people to diffuse tensions which arise during election. All these things are brought by poverty. You know, if every person, that's why you see in developed countries, they even don't know when is the election date. They are not interested because they are able economically. So, in short, so that I leave others to contribute. There are three key areas we need to focus on: political, economic, and mental. What is the point? There can never be political independence without economic independence. And there can never be economic independence without mental independence. And the mentor becomes key and critical. Dr. Masanga, that is why you see in our constitution, a person who's mentally confused loses the power to lead. Have you ever seen a person who's mentally confused being nominated as a disabled person, either to go to parliament? No. When you are mentally confused, you lose. Which have you ever seen nominated? Is there a person who's mentally confused? So mentor, Dr. Masanga, is the key. You
And
lose
yet-
your mentality,
And yet,
you lose everything.
can we get it clear that mental illness is also inability?
No.
Can you be categorized?
Mental
under,
illness.
Can you be categorized under Mwaura's section?
Let me tell you this. Let me ask my fellow panelists. Can you nominate a madman to go to parliament? Can you?
No, the Kenya law does not allow. If you are insane or mad, they cannot allow to elect you.
Therefore, what brings insanity is mental breakdown. Therefore, if you are fully mentally developed and you get your perspective correct, you change everything. And that is why we say even a president who's mentally incapacitated loses the will and the authority to rule and must be replaced. Therefore, to summarize, Dr. Masanga, in fact, where we need to focus on is the mentality which comes from mental. Ask yourself, I know all the panelists have chemists in their areas. How can our doctors who finish from pharmacy degrees go to sit in chemists dispensing drugs when their fellow pharmacists in developed countries are doing research to manufacture? Can you imagine? All of these people you see in chemists are doctors dispensing Panadol. Give us a break. Let us get our perception correct if we have to change Africa. If we must be truly independent, let us be how people are selfless like you, Daktari. And I've given a proposal for me. That's why I admire Uhuru Manufacturing. Let us run with one we call manufacturing in rural Africa, Daktari, and you will see. I'm convinced. I will bring on board one guy and we will discuss this issue. For now, Daktari, let me not take long. I submit.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. We have done our best. We have come and said, I have identified the areas where Africa must wake up, where Africa must stand up, where Africa must pull its socks. As we come to the end of this show, we see the same region. We see the same people, the same actors, the same forest, the same monkeys. We haven't seen any yellow monkey. I don't know whether any of you has ever seen a yellow monkey. The forest remains the same green, the monkeys remain black. Museveni raised the point that why do we black people, we are beaten everywhere. In the US, we are crying. On African continent, we are crying. In Europe, we are crying. And I want to tell you that Museveni today went very berserk. He said he was, I don't know how the French ambassador, how the French ambassador in Uganda failed when his country was indirectly being hit. The truth here is this. East or West, on this one, I hope African presidents must wake up and do something. I suggest to Africa one day, and let me, as I finalize, we close down. Doctor, I suggested to Africa, pull out of ICC. ICC will bring you more problems. I went to court. I shouted my voice. I was going to be killed. Actually, they planned to kill me. If it had been not some people in Kenya, I would have been killed. You know that. The NGOs actually said I should be taken to jail. Makao Mutua wrote a piece. You can Google it for yourselves. That I should be put to jail. Because I was suggesting to Africa, why do you wait for a white man is court, selected by white man, equipped by white man, paid, funded logistically money by France, Germany, and George Soros to imprison you? What was the reason? What's the rationale? What France is doing, Britain has not done it in Africa. No. We want to take this opportunity. I personally, I take the opportunity to thank the British. The education that I got from Britain. The tools of analysis I got is from Britain. Her Majesty her money educated me. I'm proud of Britain because they do things that don't bring us chaos. But France, I am not proud of France. And I don't care a damn. If they don't want me to go there, I don't need to learn French anyway. But it's sad that you find there was no conflict in Mozambique. Now there is total oil and there is a conflict in Mozambique. They are controlling in, out. They went and struck Gaddafi. Turkey has equally also come. Now we have Turkey, we have Qatar. The conflict in Somalia behind us here, east. Who is fueling it? Turkey is giving Somalia sophisticated planes. That's why you see Somalia withdraws from any arrangement that can be feasible. Stop planes from Kenya. Kenya also now stops the planes. These are things that touch we Africans. What time, when, how we can start slowly is through the program that I had last 1 week. You saw that program. People like Dr. Nyachama, all of you spoke on that program. You saw the anger of Africans. You saw the anger of the younger generation. That program had over 4,000 people wanting to join at a go. I stood firm, I said there was no space. But still millions and millions, you can go and check it. Millions and millions have watched worldwide. So when we do such conferences, Your Excellency President Museveni, keep an eye, and I want to thank you very much since I am a student of political science higher than you, I don't want to fail to praise myself for Tawish in terms of political science, because the president, I don't know whether he has done a master's degree, but if he has done it, I am a bit, I've passed those stages. Sir, I am ahead. I am here. Give me the tools, the energy to energize me to bring a better Africa. Don't control Pan-Africanism in Kampala. Pan-Africanism is everywhere. Yes, I don't need to work from Kampala in order to be called I'm a Ugandan. This is a global market, Mr. President. Why do you want me to eat matoke all the time? I need to eat some mutton in Khartoum. I need to eat fish. And unfortunately, I don't eat frogs, which are French animals. I need to spread this thing of Pan-Africanism on the continent. Your Excellency, let's not leave this generation with nothing. Let's not only teach them to pick guns and topple governments. Let's teach them how to stand to defend their sunshine. Hallelujah. How to defend your sunshine. Sunshine in some parts of the world is apportioned. Why do you go against God who apportioned, who gave them little sunshine and gave us more? Are you not also against God? Have you asked yourselves, why is there sunshine in Africa to an extent that there is a desert which is hotter than sunshine itself? And there's no desert in the where? Where is the desert in Europe? Show me. Show me. Why don't we defend the integrity, the sovereignty of our state? Unite and defend. If there is something to quit in Africa, let's quit. Hamas, let's quit. You see ICC, you Kenyans, you are Kenyans, all of you on the panel. ICC is coming back slowly. It is telling you, tuko nakuja. It is piercing you slowly. And is about to enter. Have you seen a snail? Fatou Bensouda is not going to leave the International Criminal Court without tears. She wants to leave someone with tears somewhere in Africa. Why do you wait for such things to happen to your continent? I challenge you people that as we end this show, we shall have many other shows, Dr. Nanchama, that will bring out many and many. Tomorrow on KTN Live, 6 o'clock, KTN News, watch the space as we discuss the BBI. Thank you very much. I'll be cutting the real cut of Matsanga there. I want to thank you so much. I want to thank you for sparing your time this evening. I want all of you. I know we do things in difficult conditions, with differing conditions, under different situations. But being people emboldened by the message of Pan-Africanism by Museveni today, there you are. God bless you. God bless Africa. God bless all of you. Asante sana. Mungu awabariki. Thank you.
Thank you, Doc. Thank you.
peace must be our goal and our guide. And all that we strive for as a human family, dignity and hope, progress and prosperity, depends on peace. But peace depends on us.